All right, so this is our first town hall of 2022. So Happy New Year to everyone. I'm excited to give you updates on the 3 communities that we're currently working with. We have a lot going on and we really hit the ground running this year. Our team has been super busy. Okay, just want to make sure I have everything right. Marissa, do I have the view correct? Yes? Okay, perfect. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Jones Road Groundwater Plume Superfund site, the San Jacinto River Waste Pit Superfund site, and Greater Fifth Ward. All right, so a few items going on in the Jones Road area that I'm going to touch on tonight. Now, we have a meeting coming up, which Rachel will talk about towards the end of this meeting. And so I'm not going to go too extensively into any of these issues, but and I know I say that, but you'll see, I feel like I actually am going a little deeper than I usually do in this presentation. But we will definitely take a much deeper dive at our community specific meetings in the coming weeks. So regarding the 5-year review for the Jones Road Groundwater Plume Superfund site, we submitted a report on our position in efforts to hopefully influence the EPA's 5-year review. And we submitted that to the EPA in the end of November of last year. It was interesting because we submitted this report and then we found out that in fact the EPA, although they are not scheduled to release their full 5-year review of the Superfund site's record of decision until September of this year, we found out that they had in fact issued an addendum in October. So this is, again, one of the reasons, why THEA's work is important, because time after time with the Superfund sites, we see the agency, the EPA, simply checking boxes and doing reports, taking actions in terms of paperwork and putting it away on a shelf or in a file and nobody in the public knowing about it. And, we had no idea that they created this addendum. And over a month later, when we submitted our report, in multiple conversations later with agency people, we were finally told about this addendum. And it's actually of great concern. So the addendum outlined 2 primary issues, but I want to read to you the protectiveness statement. This is how the addendum closed. So the protectiveness statement, this is the EPA's writing. Everything from protectiveness statement to the bottom of the screen is their own language. It says, the remedy at this site is not protective because exposure to contaminants in groundwater in the residential area exists through the use of private water wells. The following actions need to be taken to ensure protectiveness: delineate and evaluate extent of groundwater plume, implement appropriate actions to prevent human exposure to contaminated groundwater and any potential vapor intrusion, and develop and implement institutional controls, or ICs. So these items here that they have outlined, the fact that we need to better understand where the plume of contamination is today. They need to take action to eliminate the exposure to people from contaminated groundwater, and as well as any vapors that might be coming into the home through the ground or through the water source. And then also develop and implement the institutional controls. We're not seeing that. We saw time after time in our review of all of the material that the EPA has published to date that we could get our hands on, these same issues, and a consistent thread of the agency recognizing that people are being exposed, people are not being notified. And we're also seeing the agency not take action. So in this addendum, they included 2 data sets, and this is one of them. So this is the sampling results from June of 2020. And what they said in the report was that they found consistent sampling above the allowable, legally allowable level of these contaminants in the groundwater in 2019, 2020, and 2021. Yet people still have wells in this area. So the pink boxes here are the results for the groundwater wells that were sampled within the restricted area, again in June of 2020. And the legal limit is 5 micrograms per liter. And in an ununiform way, they found varying levels of perchloroethylene. And so they found 7.1 micrograms per liter on the lower end of above the MCL, all the way up to 26 micrograms per liter. And so if you will recognize that the Superfund site ground zero is this L-shaped shopping center right here. And northwest in the subdivision west of Jones Road, they found a level well above the MCL at 26 micrograms per liter. And here we are now in 2022, and the agency hasn't taken action. So we are not okay with that. And we have been making our rounds, talking to any elected official or representing body that will listen to us. And so we have been busy with meetings already this year. And I really look forward to having the opportunity to have the community specific meeting for this in a couple of weeks to talk about where each of these elected officials stand and what we hope to do about this. As of right now, I have sent a passionate response to the EPA, the head of Region 6, I believe it's Remedial Technology and Superfund, and we've yet to hear a response, basically asking, when are you guys going to take action? Year after year, you write these reports noting that people are being exposed. Why keep writing them? I feel like, why are we continuing to test? Why are we continuing to write? We as speaking, the agency, if they're not going to do anything. And so we're waiting to hear back from the EPA, hopefully within the time frame before we meet for the community specific meeting. I'll have an update on that. But just to let you know, we're going to continue on our efforts to fill in the gaps, because the EPA continues to test groundwater, but they're not testing out in the community for vapors. And it's very likely that where you find these contaminants in the groundwater, you are also going to find it in the air. And so we have a partnership with 2 local medical research universities, and we are calling for volunteers to participate in a sampling event with us. We have been working on this for several months now, so this is probably not the first time you've heard about this, but we were able to secure a piece of mobile lab equipment to go out in the field with toxicologists and our team at THEA, and literally in real time sample people's air and water. So what we're going to do in the first quarter of this year, we're going to continue looking to get volunteers to sign up to have their air and water tested, and also to fill out a health survey for the organization. And then in the second quarter, that's when the sampling will begin. This is going to be a year-long effort because it is a process. And so then the sampling will take place, and then analysis. And then before the end of the year, we will have a large community event where we present the findings publicly. Prior to that, each participant will receive their own private data and information. The last thing we want to do is find a problem and not have a solution. So we want to be sure that we have everything packaged and put together so that when we come into the community, we are truly there to serve the residents of the community and help however they need with this situation. I wanted to point out on this map before I move on that the areas in orange are areas that are known to be still on groundwater wells. The areas in blue are on a public water source, or what we would say is a safe water source. And then the ones that are, I'll say the color of the treetops, those are properties that are unknown, but if they're not hooked up to the public source or the blue parcels, then you can safely assume that they are being supplied by a groundwater well. I do see a hand raised, and I'm sorry, I did not cover housekeeping. So before we move on to the San Jacinto River waste pits, I will address questions and comments at the end of this presentation. I'm going to touch on the San Jacinto waste pits, and then Rachel is going to talk about Greater Fifth Ward and our upcoming meetings, and then we will do Q&A. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat or your comments. If you're like me and you might forget, go ahead and drop them in there. We'll definitely get to them. All right, so for the waste pits, we have some interesting new information, and I see a couple reporters on this Zoom that I know are interested in this area in particular. So before I get into the details, for those of you that are not as familiar with this site, there's two major impoundments here that make up this Superfund site. And so we're going to talk a bit of detail about the northern impoundments, which is outlined here in green, and then the southern impoundments, which is outlined in yellow. All right, so first, let's talk about the northern waste pit. I have some information that community members are not going to be happy with, and I'm sorry, I am the bearer of bad news. In October of 21, the Remedial Design contractors requested a 270-day extension on the design of the northern pit. I'll talk about the reasons here in a minute. On January 12th of this year, the EPA partially approved a 160-day extension. We, in between those two times, had a CAC meeting with the EPA, and they knew that we were not happy, and they knew that the community was not going to be happy, and they let us know that they were not weighing this decision lightly, and that they were really looking at all of the reasons why this request was made, what areas could continue moving forward, and what areas truly need more time. So that is how, over 100 days later, they wound up with a partial extension. And so the remedial deadlines now are going to be rolling. So January 17th, yesterday, about 4 or 5 documents were due to the EPA. And these were part of that original remedial design package that would have been due anyways. So the EPA said, okay, these 4 or 5 pieces of work should not warrant any more effort. They should be able to be wrapped up by January 17th. And then they, item by item, looked at what was going to need more attention. So that's how we have 4 deadlines here. We have January 17th, March 31st, a whole other set of items are going to be due to the EPA, May 31st, and June 26th. June 26th is the final deadline for these remedial design documents to the EPA from the responsible parties contractors for this northern pit. So how did we get here? Well, as you all know, we have had an unnecessary amount of delays to date. In the first and even the second delay that has happened during this remedial design process, it's fair to say that the work that needed to be done was not done. And now we're in a situation that there's a monumental effort to find out these important details before they break ground. So the supplemental design investigation found that the waste is, as y'all know, deeper and further out than they originally assumed. And that increases the amount of waste that's going to be removed from this site, the amount of water that's going to be removed and treated, the amount of trucks. You know, it really increases every part of this effort. So larger excavation effort, a deeper excavation level, which presents an entire set of not only worker safety, but construction safety items that need to be further worked out. And then one item in particular that I feel even more passionate about, because had adequate sampling been done in the first place, this would have been recognized. But you can follow my cursor. You see the solid black line. There were not adequate samples taken in this area in the earlier samples. And when we caught that, when we saw that, you know, in fact, samples were not being taken appropriately in this area to characterize the waste, we requested that the agency require the responsible parties to take additional samples. When that took place, they found, yeah, in fact, this area does need to be cleaned up. And so they were planning to originally put the wall here, that outer, best management practices, that outer cofferdam wall that they'll do the construction within. And as a result of that additional sampling, they've had to move the wall out. And so, as you can see, going from this double white line now to this orange line, the outer perimeter of that wall has changed. Its footprint has changed. And so now they're looking at different depths, different places where that wall is going to be impacted. And I am really excited to show y'all a bit of the below ground surface strata or different levels underground, because it is a lot of overlapping and crisscross. Underground is not just like a 3-layered cake here, right? It's not like those consistent layers. There's a lot of areas that cross and intertwine. And so there's additional details that need to be worked out because this wall is now changed. Also, I believe it's the Clean Water Authority, but it's the entity that is working on the releases from the Lake Houston Dam. They have yet to complete their modeling. And so it's hard to know how high this wall needs to be built when they don't know what type of flood stages they're going to be dealing with from the dam lowering and the effort that's going on to the north on the river. And so I have submitted questions about that to the EPA. And we are right now working on getting the rest of our questions together from reviewing the material on this extension. And we will be having a meeting with the EPA and the CAC on January 24th. So when we meet next to talk about the waste pits, when we have a community meeting, one, we will hopefully be in person and virtual, but hopefully they're at the community center. I know most of you who are on attend in person. We hope to be there and be able to have a lot of answers for you that we don't necessarily have right now because we need to meet with the EPA. So sorry to bring you the bad news about the northern pit, but the southern pit is rocking on. So I have a bit of good news for the southern pit. We are on track to see construction begin an actual physical removal of waste at the southern pit this year. So that's the good bit of news. There is sampling that has been ongoing at the southern pit. So they are currently sampling the sidewalls and the bottom of the areas that are going to be excavated at that southern waste pit. And so these are the areas right now that they're sampling. There's the 4 areas here in the varying colors that are going to be excavated. And then they're also doing further waste characterization, which is part of the determination for the disposal of this waste, and a whole host of things in terms of how this waste is handled. So the spots that are this color here will be sampled and processed for waste characterization. So I believe the latest round of sampling concluded last week. So when we meet with the EPA next week, we'll also receive updates on the ongoing efforts at this site. But even with some of the COVID delays with the labs and with workers, things are still moving full steam ahead towards construction at this southern pit. All right, now for my counterpart, Rachel Jordan, our assistant director. She is going to present a couple of items to you guys this evening.
Thanks, Jackie. So first, we're going to start with just our updates about what's going on in the Greater Fifth Ward communities. On November 19th, EPA Administrator Michael Regan made his way through Houston and surrounding areas on what was referred to as the Journey for Justice. That led him straight to the Greater Fifth Ward communities, as well as the communities surrounding the Houston Ship Channel. While he was here, Regan had the opportunities to speak with some of the members of our communities that are directly impacted by the legacy pollution that we know is harming so many people. So when Regan, along with Mayor Turner and County Attorney Menifee, they all took a seat on our very own Miss Edwards' front yard and listened to the heartbreaking stories of the loss from the community. This visit gave a voice and a seat at the table to those that have been silenced and ignored for so long. And then during the subsequent press event in the Greater Fifth Ward, Regan made the commitment to help the community with their ongoing struggle to get the creosote contamination from the Union Pacific Railroad on Liberty Street cleaned up. And here, these are just like a couple of pictures that we got while we were at this event. It was a really nice little thing where everybody just kind of sat around and talked, and people finally got to feel heard. It was really great to watch. And then, so in 2021, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ, said that they would host a public meeting this January to provide updates on the Union Pacific permit application. Unfortunately, the TCEQ has still not provided a date for that meeting, but we will continue to keep you informed and updated as we learn more. All right, so we have several upcoming meetings for our communities. Be sure to keep an eye out for our social posts and emails with details on how to RSVP for your community's meeting. Our individual community meetings are now going to be held in a hybrid format until further notice, meaning that you can attend either through Zoom like we have been, or you can join us in person again, finally. And those locations will be sent out with the email meeting invitations, and they'll also be posted on all of our social media. But our town hall meetings, the ones that involve all three communities, information and updates about all three like this, they're going to continue to be held only virtually, because we don't want to try to make people drive to a central location, because our communities are kind of all over the place. So as you can see here, our Jones Road community meeting that is hybrid is going to be on February 1st. We are co-hosting and with Impact a meeting for the Greater Fifth Ward communities on February 8th, also a hybrid meeting. And then we have a virtual town hall like this, purely virtual, and that's going to be March 1st. And then on March 22nd, we'll be giving all of the newest updates for the San Jacinto River waste pits on March 22nd. And that's going to be hybrid. So we have virtual and in person as well. And we're really looking forward to be able to see you guys in person again.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. I know some of you are probably wondering why we aren't having our San Jac meeting until the 22nd of March. We were not able to secure the community center. So securing the venue was a bit of an issue for us. And so we could not get the dates to match up. Please feel free to call me though. I'm happy to chat with any of you about these things that are going on. If you want to get your thoughts to us early, before we have the CAC meeting, and make sure you know that we're truly in there representing your voice, and the points that you have, please feel free to reach out, email, call. We're happy to hear from you guys. We hope to hear from you. All right, so let's go ahead and open it up for Q&A. We are making really good time, which is crazy because I feel like we just covered a lot of information. Okay, so let's see. Rachel, will you go ahead and unmute all? And Rachel or Marissa, sorry. All right, so while folks are getting unmuted, we have a couple questions in the chat. Okay, so first question, are they going outside of the plume? Yes, so I know that question is in reference to Jones Road. So let's go back. Okay, so the testing that we're going to be doing, we will be going outside of the plume. So, you know, we don't want to go just where historically the EPA has said the contamination is, because at the end of the day, the last map that we have of where the plume is for the Jones Road Superfund site is from 2010, which is just like, it's crazy, 2010, like really. So that's another item that we're asking the EPA to update. And so, okay, interesting. So we will definitely be going outside of the plume. All right, give me just a minute, y'all. Okay, so all right, so I'm unmuting all the lines right now. And if you could, please keep your line muted until you ask a question or give your comment. That way we just keep down on background noise, but feel free to unmute yourself or drop something in the chat if you would like. We have a couple more items here in the chat that I will address. Okay, so let's see, another question in the chat. Do we know where the waste is going and how is it moving? Not sure about the second part of that question. What you mean, how is it moving? Like, how is it going to be transported? If that's so, it will be transported by truck. We don't, as far as we know, there's not been a facility determined yet. It will be going to a permitted facility that takes this type of waste. That, you know, that's what they do, is they manage this type of dioxin contaminated waste. Okay, another question. How can I help? Great question. I love that. One, being here tonight, finding out this information, learning about the issues in your community, and then taking that to others, talking to your neighbors, your friends, your family, your colleagues, right? If you tell someone and they tell other people, right? Just continue sharing this truthful, real message about what's going on in the community is really how the movement builds to get these sites cleaned up appropriately. All of the communities we've talked about have dealt with burdens of contamination for far too long. And our power is truly people power, right? We need the people of our communities to hold the government agencies responsible. So if you want to share which community specifically, Oscar, I might be able to give you a little bit more info. Oh, hey, I see Dr. Spike. All right, lots of board members on here. Thank y'all. All right, Gil, I see you are unmuted. Do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to congratulate you for your new child.
Oh, well, thank you, Gil. He has been a joy. He's already in bed, so it's been great and it's going well. Thank you, Gil.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. Are there any other questions? Oh, I see Pam Bonta's got her hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say hi to Gil because I haven't seen you in years. And I miss y'all. This is Jackie's mom,
Yeah,
Pamela. And it would be nice to see everybody in person again so
you're
we
right.
can appreciate everybody's work and your work, Gil.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Nice
yeah.
to hear from you too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's what I wanted to say.
All right, so we did get a couple more items that have come through in the chat. Okay, so Oscar, particularly the community of Fifth Ward. All right, so the February 8th meeting for Fifth Ward is going to be a bit of a strategy session as well as an information session. So the community leaders are planning an action later in the month of February. And so that meeting is where we're going to talk about, the goals of the action, what residents want to do, to help raise awareness and get some more attention to the issue in the community. And so that'll be important to attend for that reason. And then if we have any updates from TCEQ about the process, then the permitting process there, then we'll also share that information at that meeting. All right, Leah, can you say yes? Leah is asking about which elected officials we've been meeting with for the Jones Road Superfund site. So we have established relationships in the past with the different elected officials. I've met previously in Washington, D.C. with Dan Crenshaw's office, but we have not met with his office on the 5-year review specific issue. We've also not yet met with Oliverson's office for this issue, which I know there's been some redistricting though. So we did meet with Sam Harless, and he is the one who fully has this area now. And so we met with his office. They appeared, very concerned. They were really engaged. I think it was a successful meeting. And so now we're outlining some next steps. We've also recently met with Harris County Pollution Control. We've met with Harris County Attorney's Office with the environmental department. And then we've also met with Harris County Attorney Menifee. And we also met with this year, which we're only a couple weeks in. We've also have met with Commissioner Tom Ramsey for the Jones Road site. And I'll say, Leah, across the board, the elected officials in our local government agencies are really concerned about this. And I know that the agencies we've met with are looking into, what the different authorities are, what can be done, as well as the Superfund law in and of itself, what the EPA has authority to do that they aren't doing, right? You'll probably remember in 2019, there was a community meeting for the Jones Road Superfund site. And residents were saying to the EPA, why is this shopping center still open? And the EPA's response was, we're not in the business of shutting down businesses. And that was just mind-blowing for me, because for those of you who aren't familiar with the Jones Road site, it's literally an act on top of, or it's under an active business. Like there's literally businesses on top of it. And there's no warning signs. The people who work there or the people who go to these places get no warning. There's nothing there telling them that they're stepping foot on an active Superfund site. And it's mind-blowing. And so is that really what the law says, that they don't have that authority? I don't think so. And so there's a bit of research that's going on to see exactly what moves, can be taken here.
Yes, I'm here, Jackie.
Thanks for tuning in. All right, folks. Well, give you one more round of refusal. Any more questions or comments? And if not, we can go ahead and sign off for the evening, but I want to make sure that we're not missing anybody. All right, Rachel, Marissa, can you think of anything that you can, or anything else that we should mention tonight before we sign off? I think you covered it all, Jackie. Great job. Thank you. Let me pull back up. We did just get a question in the chat about the Fifth Ward update. So the pictures here that, you know, Rachel went over, I want to point out a couple of people here and go into detail when EPA Administrator Regan made his tour through the South. This here is Sandra Edwards, one of the leaders from Impact. Most of the leaders and the founders of Impact were there, as well as the creosote man here. This gentleman here in the back, though, is Matt Tejada. For those of you who might be involved in the environmental side of Houston, or have been for some time, I mean, might know Matt as the former director of Air Alliance Houston. He is now the head of environmental justice for the EPA in Washington, D.C., like the head at EPA headquarters. And he was there on the administrator's tour. We also had here Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee, and then Mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner. This is the administrator here. And so it was a really powerful event. But I think that overall, you know, when someone who is appointed by the president comes to the community, there's always press and cameras and commitments that are made. And Administrator Regan committed to helping the communities get to the bottom of what's going on here and getting the creosote contamination cleaned up. And we want to make sure now that the EPA actually does that, right? That they're not just coming to town for a press show, you know, right? You can come here, meet in the front yards, but then you've actually got to live up to your word. And so that is what we're carefully watching for and waiting for now, as are the residents, undoubtedly. Also with the TCEQ items, we will be discussing that at the February 8th community specific meeting. There have not been any updates or announcements from TCEQ about a permit meeting. So we'll be meeting again in the Jones Road community February 1st. February 8th will be Greater Fifth Ward. March 1st will be the town hall. And then we'll meet for San Jac on March 22nd. Now that's a ways away, but like I said earlier, please feel free to call me, email us, and I'm more than happy to talk through these items with you guys. All right then. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm glad to be back and presenting to you all, and we'll look forward to meeting with the communities here in a couple of weeks. Look forward to seeing y'all in person finally. All right, good night.